My name is Danny Ledone, Danny Ledonne, and my film is Playing Columbine, a true story of video game controversy. The film follows a controversial 2005 video game released on the internet called Super Columbine Massacre RPG, a game that traces the last day in the life of the two school shooters from Columbine High School. The game itself was at first attacked in the public and in the press, and then it was blamed for a school shooting in Montreal. And finally, it was rejected from the list of finalists from a game competition. But along the way, it developed a lot of ardent supporters, and myself, as the creator of the game, decided that it would make an interesting subject for a film to look at the future of games in digital culture. I decided early on that what I wanted to make was a film that explored the larger issues that the Columbine game raised. And so I had developed quite a few contacts in the game industry and elsewhere, as along the way a lot of people contacted me because I made myself pretty publicly available for people who were critical of the game or people who supported it. And so I just put my camera in my backpack and I did a lot of traveling and a lot of interviewing and pieced together what I feel is a pretty comprehensive understanding of not only the Columbine game itself, but the potential for games that have a social message or address a contemporary issue to look at those things in an interactive way. Yeah, one of the arguments that the film makes is that every medium, whether it's theater, whether it's film, graphic novels, video games, goes through a kind of rite of passage where our culture at first is afraid of it and doesn't really understand it, and then it tries to figure out what its limits are, what it can do, and video games are right in the middle there because obviously there are films about a subject like Columbine, there are books about it. So clearly it's a subject that we're prepared to deal with on some level, but the idea of making a video game about a school shooting is a bit removed, and the film tries to explore why. And I think one of the problems that video games face is that they've been marketed as entertainment. They're a way to pass your time, they may take a few of your idle hours away, and you may have a fun time playing it, but it certainly isn't designed to challenge your sensibilities or inform you in a way other than that. And so here's a game that does that, but it's very easy to misread, and it's very easy to play into a lot of conventional fears that people have about video games, particularly related to children and the influence that they have on them. So, virtually every medium has gone through this period, and this film tries to connect those dots and get people to think that perhaps video games are really going through what comic books went through in the 1950s or film went through in the 1930s, and the rating systems, whether they're government or voluntary, or how we regulate them. Do we regulate them? And what do we expect from the games that we play? This is a film that asks those questions. I love about being a documentary filmmaker in general is whatever subject you sort of throw your dart on the map to explore, you inadvertently have to become an expert. Not the expert, but you interview a lot of people who give you a lot of perspectives. And I feel like I took that journey with the Columbine game and with making the documentary Playing Columbine, because I very quickly became aware that there were in fact other game makers interested in making games about controversial or difficult subjects. And so I interviewed them. I got their perspectives. And I interviewed people who were critical of games and who were worried about the effects that they have and perhaps didn't care for the Columbine game at all. So along the way, I think I learned a lot more about the issues that are raised when a video game about a school shooting is released on the internet. While I made a video game, I don't really consider myself a video game maker, because that was a one-time effort. But I do see myself as a long-term professional documentary filmmaker. And this was a project that was once personal and immediate, but also interested in looking at an issue that I think we're going to be continually addressing in the future with regard to digital culture and how we use technology to tell stories and evaluate issues. So the film is screening tonight as its basically world premiere at the AFI Film Festival, but I've shown it at colleges and universities and at some game industry events to get feedback along the way while I was editing the film. And I think this is a film that people are really hungry for. A lot of professors want to show films like this in their classes, and they want to generate discussion about why we make games and how we can make games better or different than we are. In the future, I look forward to it being screened in many more festivals and getting distribution in academic and commercial markets so that audiences of all stripes can perhaps, if they've never played a video game, consider what kinds of video games they'd like to play to broaden the demographic of who plays games, and also for existing game players to ask more of the games they play. That it's fine to play a game like Grand Theft Auto or Halo where they just really enjoy the excitement of being in that action-packed moment, but perhaps we can also play games that enlighten or challenge us in some way. Absolutely. I think if you look at films as a medium, we have a very wide variety of things that we can do with it. We can use film to, for example, have an exciting evening at the theater where we watch The Dark Knight, and it's just this amazing spectacle that we're drawn into. We can use film to retell what happened in 1973 in Chile. We can make a film that instructs you how to safely exit an aircraft if it's crash landing or something. We can make films that arouse people. So films clearly have a wide variety of applications, and I think this film argues that perhaps video games will in the future as well. The things that the film does in the final closing minutes is really try and encourage people, not just filmmakers, but in general, to, if they're going to make art, to really be courageous, to take some risks, to make things that may be controversial and that may not be as commercially marketable, perhaps, but that will have a real value. And I think as a filmmaker myself, and in all of the work that I do, I really want to make media that matters. I want to make things that will affect people's lives in a serious way. And as a young filmmaker, I think it's a really exciting time to get into filmmaking. When I was in high school and I first started making movies, I picked up a book from the 1960s about how to make films, and I was reading about how you had to change your film in like a daylight bag, and then you had to get it processed, and then you had to look. I mean, it's very complicated and very expensive in comparison to what you can do now with a video camera and editing on your home computer. So it's a really exciting time, especially since we're getting new ways to distribute our work, new ways for people to see our films. So there's really no excuse if you are interested in this to get in and start doing it. And think about making things that aren't just entertaining, but also perhaps get us to rethink some of our assumptions about whatever topic you're addressing. Well, I arrived here about an hour ago, and I've been touring the press circuit, so it's a bit overwhelming. But I'm looking forward to screening my film at the ArcLight. Anyone who knows LA that I've spoken to about this is quite envious that I get to screen my film there, because it's a very, very notable, very, very technically accomplished place, and I'm delighted to premiere my film here.